So, back in the 80s, there was a surge of what they called movie novelizations, kind of like what we have today, but more so. Back then, you didn't VHS was very expensive, and of course Betamax out of the question. Watching movies over and over again wasn't really a thing. Granted, eventually after the movie left theaters, it would go onto TV and you could watch it that way. But a weird subgenre of books came out called movie novelizations, where you could just relive your favorite movies by reading them. What a concept. But there were a couple different types of movie novelizations, and I've reviewed several movie novelizations in the last year. Like Alien Covenant, The Predator, so on and so forth. Just these movie novelizations that don't really add to the movie. But then again, you get a novel like The Phantom Menace, where Terry Brooks adds scenes to the beginning of the novel that aren't in the movie. And so, when it came time to promote Rambo First Blood Part 2, the production company wanted a novel. The only problem was, only one person was legally allowed to write that novel, and that was David Morrell himself, who wrote First Blood. So they approached David Morrell and asked him to write this novel. He said no. And I will have to spoil First Blood, the novel, right now, because it's kind of key in why he didn't want to write a sequel. So, 3, 2, 1, spoiler skip to this time code. Rambo dies. He is killed by Troutman. Teasel also dies. Thus, that was the whole thing I had in my last review with the allegory to Vietnam. So how on earth do you get a sequel to that? So David Morrell finally agrees after seeing test footage of Rambo First Blood Part 2. Well, he borrows material. Well, first of all, he comes up with, in my novel, Rambo dies. In the movies, he lives on. That is how the book begins. But it's interesting. You get not just the script they shot with, you get James Cameron wrote a script, which David Morrell borrows scenes from, like, for instance, Troutman finding Rambo in a solitary cell where you shut off the lights and he looks like a caged animal. That is from the James Cameron script. But also David Morrell added some of his own stuff, some things he found interesting about the character, because Rambo didn't even have a first name in the first novel. He was just referred to as Rambo. In the movie, they gave him the name Rambo John J. So, and in Rambo First Blood Part 2, they came up with Rambo being of German and Cherokee descent, which I'm sorry is stupid. Stallone looks Italian. He doesn't look German at all. I get the Cherokee, I guess, because he has darker skin and he has long hair, but it's kind of frickin' racist to me. I digress. So David Morrell plays off of that and some of his memories of his mother's side being Cherokee and him growing up with the tribe and stuff, which is some interesting stuff. Also, it delves into Zen Buddhism, which is also fascinating, and his relationship with Ko, the love interest of the movie, which is not fleshed out in the movie at all. But what we get in this book is so much better than the movie. I was stunned. David Morrell really delves into Rambo's psyche once again. We get more of a relationship between him and Troutman in this. We get just him having to relive Vietnam again. Not to mention, the camp he goes to is the one he escaped from that is talked about in the flashbacks in First Blood. More so in the novel than the movie, but hey, it is what it is. So, Rambo's dealing with there's a lot of extra scenes that were not in the movie. There's a creepy Rambo's walking over the bones of dead soldiers. There's a torture sequence that's not in the movie. You get more fleshed out characterization of the villains. One of the villains was the same as the torturer in the flashbacks in First Blood, which makes an interesting parallel. Overall, this book is very excellent. It was a lot better than I expected, and I was very pleased. This also gets a 5 out of 5.